I was on Reddit the other day and I found this post from a guy who's struggling with anger issues. This is what he said.
I'm in a really tough spot right now, and I've been carrying around a lot of anger towards my parents for years. When I was just 10 years old, I caught my mother cheating on my father, who struggled with explosive anger and severe mental health issues. Also, growing up, I felt like I was the only child who faced punishment, constantly being spanked while my siblings were spared. Fast forward to now, and my parents have seemingly resolved their issues. They've worked on their mental health, patched up their finances, and present themselves as the epitome of a perfect family during birthdays and gatherings. They shower me with gifts, emotional support, and even help take care of my kids when I'm in a bind. Here's where it gets complicated. Despite their efforts to make amends, I can't shake the feeling of resentment. Every time my parents slip up, even in the slightest, I find myself exploding with anger, lashing out at them just like my father did in the past. Despite their understanding and apologies, I can't seem to move past it. I've tried talking to them, but it always ends in tears and further distance between us. Do I cut ties to spare them from my wrath, or do I seek help to work through these pent-up emotions? I just want to find a way to heal and move forward, for the sake of my own mental health and for the sake of my relationship with my parents.
That story is heartbreaking for so many reasons. A couple of things are clear. His parents got it together. They clearly addressed whatever issues were causing his dad to blow up or whatever problems they had in their relationship. You can't change the fact that the Reddit user was traumatized by what he saw and all the abuse in his childhood. But what I would tell him is, first of all, within this story is hope. Because very often parents never own their wrong. He didn't specifically say that they had ever acknowledged how they mistreated him. But what they're doing is he acknowledged that they're treating him better and they're trying to shower him with gifts, but there's still this bitterness around finding his mother in that compromising position, his dad always blowing up, knowing his mother was having multiple affairs. All of that you can't change, but the fact that these people have turned it around is huge. It's huge. So that's good starting ground. Now, with respect to how they seem to still continue to have unequal treatment of the different siblings, there's two things that could be. It could actually be real, or it's voices from the past and trauma glasses that won't let him see where even that may have changed. He mentioned that they didn't pay for his schooling and he's getting ready to graduate with his doctorate and everything. But the other side of that is that what he's perceiving as unequal treatment of himself, with like siblings having things paid for, being gifted maybe better gifts or whatever it is, that could either be just a perception of his or it could be real. But the other thing is, when we harbor these ill feelings and we internalize and continue to hold on to the trauma, we're exuding a certain persona to the abusers or to other people in our lives. And we're not often aware of how we're coming off to other people. And that could be blocking some of the things that he thinks they should be doing for them. If every time we get in the same room, I'm dealing with you blowing up, then at some point I'm going to draw back and I'm going to not even want to be around you. So because there's so much missing here, we'll just try to deal with just the facts as they were presented. What I would tell this person is that it's clear that you are still connected to the past. And I want to spend some time on that for all of us trauma survivors. This can show up in many different ways. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you were growing up and you were mistreated as a child. I mean, seriously, just done wrong. And so you decide, as most of us do, I'm never going to be like so-and-so, whoever it was. But what we wind up doing by virtue of determining that we're never going to be that, almost inevitably, we turn out to be that. This situation, he connected that he's acting like his dad used to act. So now there you go, right? The other scenario is that you determine that you're going to spend the rest of your life being the complete opposite of the abuser. That's a touchy situation because, like I say, it's good not to want to be that, but what's not good is anything you do as a trauma survivor that keeps you deliberately connected to that person. Now, I'm going beyond drawing boundaries, just don't go, just don't be around them kind of thing. I'm concerned with a major focus on not being that, becoming your whole persona. Everything you do is because you're going to do the exact opposite of what your abuser did. Now, what that actually is that you are grown, you've moved on, you recognize that, okay, now my life is my responsibility as wrong as that is. My healing is my responsibility as wrong as that is. But what you've done by virtue of everything in your life, everything that you live, trying to be the opposite of that person, is you have tied a rope around that past trauma and you've drug it down through the decades and you're holding on to the other end. Why do I say that that's a problem? It's a problem because that's a deliberate maintaining connected to the past trauma. What I see when those kind of things happens, and even the situation with this person on Reddit, is that what we've done is we have deliberately attached ourselves to that, and we're holding on to it for dear life. Your entire focus remains on the person who had control of you in the first place. I am not sitting here telling y'all that it's an easy win to work through the trauma, especially childhood trauma like this Reddit user had. That's a whole different avenue. It's a whole different thing. I've done videos here about what type of therapist that people with CPTSD need to look for, what questions they need to ask, what they need to be looking for, because any therapist in this world is not going to be the therapist for you if you suffered CPTSD. And the sad thing about it is that CPTSD sufferers or survivors are not aware that they have control and not aware that they can tell when a therapist is trained in CPTSD. Every therapist, and this is not saying that the therapists that are not trained in CPTSD are any less than. I'm just saying that you need somebody that's been trained. I'm not talking about trauma informed. That's one thing. But the people who are trauma trained are the people that have gone through the rigorous training to understand how they need to provide services to people with CPTSD. And talk therapy ain't the answer. People get tired of talk about what they've been through. Then every time they get a new therapist, now they talk about what they've been through. No, what CPTSD survivors need is somebody to show them how to survive every single day. Right? How to understand how to navigate those toxic relationships. Help them to understand and separate themselves from that trauma. Help them to understand how to integrate what they've been through in a way that they can make it a superpower and that they don't allow it to rule their lives. And not every therapist is trained in that. Okay, now I'm off on a tangent. Let's get back to this. So with this guy, he admitted, and rightfully so, that he was harboring bitterness from the past. Well, that's got to be worked through. That's got to be worked through. It's going to be a deliberate thing for him to decide, I am tired of this anger ruling my life. He clearly has a desire, from what he said, to have a better relationship with his parents, but he's going to have to work through that anger. Now, how do you do that? First of all, I'm going to suggest that you admit, I'm just mad at you for what you did to me in the past, and you might have to tell them that. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing is figure out what it is that you need from them that will let you know that it's okay to let go of the anger. What are you expecting from your parents? What is it that you think it would take for you to be able to decide to work through this anger? I mean, you got to get real with yourself. What is it? Do you need them to come to you and say, I did you wrong, I apologize, please forgive me? What is it that you need them to apologize for? Make a list. Just write it down. Get real with yourself about why you are putting your healing on hold, waiting on them. Get real about that. And I don't care how ridiculous it looks on paper when you write it down. Decide what it is that you need from them before you will decide to work through and let go of this anger. You're doing that for you, not so much for them. Well, once you see that, then what you're going to do is work through how much of what's on this paper is out of my control. Well, how much of that's out of my control? If it's another human being that you are waiting for before you let go of anger, quit spending your whole life trying to be the opposite of somebody as opposed to owning who you truly are and being powerful in that. What the heck is it? Because the challenge becomes the fact that no matter what you write on that paper, you can't control it. You can't control it. You can't control it. Because you can never control anybody else. Now, once you've written that down, then I want you to try to figure out, if I don't get these things from that person, am I going to continue in the way I'm angry anyway? Or am I going to own my responsibility again? It's rotten, it stinks, but once they do us wrong like that, then our healing becomes our own responsibility. Find out if what you wrote down is serious enough that it's worth giving up your life for. Is it worth giving up your peace for it? Is it worth giving up how you can thrive after surviving that stuff? Is it worth it to you? And if it is, okay, continue on as you are. But if it isn't, then you're going to have to find it in yourself to decide that, yeah, they may or may not, but why am I putting my whole healing on hold, waiting on somebody else to do something, and I can't make them do it? That's just the hardcore truth about it. Now, if there are some things that you have to come forward and get the courage to sit down and say to them, doing it in anger ain't never gonna work. And I just almost guarantee you that this guy has tried it and blew up and just cut it off. Once you blow up, that whole conversation is off because now everybody's on the defense. There's no communication going on, really. If somebody's all defensive, right? What does that do? Now I got all the past you did to me, and this is shades of the past because you all angry with me again, and we might be the ones perpetuating that. And I'm not saying every situation is like that. Let me tell you something. If your behind was in the household with a narcissistic caregiver, we have to accept that joker is narcissistic and freaking capable of owning their mess. Period, full freaking stop. And I don't know what to tell you in that case because they're never going to even bring it down to another level enough to admit where they're wrong. enough to be able to empathize with how that wrong affected you. So I don't know what to tell you in those cases, except I just pray that anybody that's been through that you have got the type of therapeutic help that you need in order to differentiate your person, who you are, your existence from that crap. I don't know. They're never going to get it. They're never going to get it, so they're never going to get better. And I don't know who they in a relationship with, but trust me, that person ain't well to be able to sit under that forever. So, I don't know what to tell you in that case, but maybe in the case of the Reddit user, maybe his parents are not narcissistic, and doesn't sound like they are. If they change their ways and pull it together, and now they're trying to shower gifts on people to make up for it, they may be capable of admitting that they did something wrong. And asking forgiveness. And then how can I help you move through this, son? Okay, so that's just a big scenario. Now, to deal with the anger issues in the moment, before we go on, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Back to the episode. I've got some things I want you to do. I'll be looking at my notes, so just bear with me. I want you to kind of take a higher perspective of this anger, recognizing that it's a ghost from the past, and it's all tied to things that are unresolved in that relationship with your parents. And I want you to remember the acronym APPLE, Apple. That's attitude, perspective, perception, lies, and expectations. Let me explain. Our attitude is how we present to the world. And like I said earlier, you may not know how all that trauma has you coming off to other people. I would venture to say that your anger issues have ventured beyond your parents. Always be aware that all of that trauma is driving how you present to the world, and therefore that energy is driving how other people respond to you. Also, the trauma has twisted your perception, which is what you perceive. So if you perceive something, you're perceiving that event through trauma glasses, okay? And because you're seeing it through trauma glasses, you aren't seeing it clearly. And so you are perceiving things from that frame of reference. And because the frame, imagine glasses, your frame of reference is tainted with the trauma, then you are making decisions based on that frame of reference. It's false evidence appearing real. And so if you are perceiving things all twisted by trauma and making decisions in your life and in your head based on that false perception, then you can only come out with less than stellar decisions because of that. Based on your perceptions, you develop a perspective. A perspective is a particular attitude toward or a way of regarding the world around you. It's your point of view. Now, if your perceptions are off, then your perspectives are off. And based on your perspective, you make life decisions, you develop relationships. It drives your worldview, your perspective on everything. And so if you have to first perceive something through trauma glasses, then you, based on that, develop perspectives that drive your life decisions. Given that you can understand the importance of questioning as trauma survivors our perceptions, to readjust our perspectives and make decisions that are not trauma driven. Now, what's feeding how you perceive things is lies, okay? So you got attitude, you got perspective, you got perception, and you have lies. And these are lies from the past, lies that were driven into your head as a child, lies that you come to believe. Now, these lies are shadows from the past because they're all based in the trauma, right? And so you are hearing things in your head that are lies based on the past. I'm just asking you to acknowledge this stuff. And then you have expectations. I'm talking about subconscious expectations. In our heads, we want a better life. We want a better relationship. We want this. We want that. We might even be praying for this. We might even be willing to pray for it and wait for it. But the problem is those conscious expectations and desires are always overridden by the subconscious expectations and desires. And those subconscious expectations and desires are built on our wanting to defend ourselves and protect ourselves from the same crap that happened in our past and all the toxicity that was perpetuated in our lives because of it. And so you have this deeper internal defense that's expecting more of the crappy past in your current life or in your here and now. And because you are expecting more of that, you don't need to protect yourself from stuff you ain't looking for. It's going to always override what you want consciously in your head. Subconscious expectations are drawing things in our lives on every level. So just remember, I call it Appletude. Attitude, perspective, perception, lies, and expectations. Just remember the Appletude. Let's move on to the next. Let's call this your fruit strategy. And this is what I want you to do the minute you start feeling angry. I need you to stop right then. No. See, you spent your life going with that flow. Nope. If you want that to change in a minute, there's some practical strategies that you can use. In that moment, you need to stop right now and flip the script on that. I have spent enough of my life going through this crap right now. I'm just going to stop. You need to just stop yourself and exit this conversation, exit the situation, just exit. That's job one. Now that you've exited, you need to recalibrate yourself. So you're going to recalibrate the perspective that the trauma glasses that have been given you. You're going to recalibrate by calming the heck down and sitting down somewhere and understanding that the anger is coming from a place from the past. Accept it. Just trust me. Just do that. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to seek understanding. You're going to need to understand what's going on in that moment as it relates to the past. So you might need to draw in some truthful, trusted others, people who have your best interest at heart, people who can take a more objective view of what happened, and you're going to share what happened. Now, in this phase, you do not get to color the story with all the anger and all the emotions that you're feeling. You don't get to do that. You're going to have to practice just the facts. Just the facts. I went in, I talked to the parents, I said this, they said that. Practice unemotionally giving just the facts to these truthful, trusted others and ask what they see. Because you could be at a meeting, for instance, and you swear you heard blase split. Now you've off to the races, upset, triggered, can't function because you heard blase split. Now, if you were to flip the script and recalibrate and try to get some understanding, then the other people in the meeting might say, I didn't hear that. No. They didn't say blase splee. What I heard was blase we. Now, if multiple others tell you that they said blase we, then you got to consider that, okay, the trauma glasses are front and center, and I heard it wrong. Now, once you get the truthful, trusted others' view of what happened after you share just the facts, you're going to go into the next phase, which is investigate, interpret, and initiate. You're going to mull over all the objective opinions you got in apparent comparison to what you saw and determine, well, no, I was wrong and I'm going off for nothing, yada, yada, yada. Or you might determine that, no, I was right and they were offensive. Then because it's so in the investigation phase, you're going to take all that in. Now you're going to sit from an objective, non-emotional viewpoint and interpret the results of your investigation. And you're going to come to a determination. Yeah, I was right or yeah, I was wrong. And then you're going to initiate the game plan, not just for this situation, but for every situation, every triggering situation you ever have had. So in other words, you're playing ahead of time. You're proactive. You're going to determine up front, next time I get into a situation that begins to trigger me in such and such a way, fill in the blank, that I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to handle that. And this is a game plan that will walk you into fewer and fewer triggering emotions, because you're not just getting jerked around by circumstance every time you do something, say something, get in a relationship, or talk to your parents. And so you develop this game plan for each trigger going forward. And then you need to trust the process. And why am I telling you this? Because you're going to eventually start seeing things differently, and you will become a different person than you were in the past. As you become this different person, they don't know you. They know that triggered person that's always tripping, and that's how they relate to you. And so when you begin to implement these strategies and you begin to change, they're going to go out to lunch. I'm just saying, that's a phrase we used back in the 70s about they tripping or they showing out or whatever. Expect that the relationships that you currently have, some of them will fall to the wayside. So people are going to start tripping. They're going to go off on you, and you will be hot off more than once by these jokers who are trying to get some equilibrium and figure out who the heck they dealing with, because it sure can't be you. And so that's what I mean about trust the process. If people start going out to lunch on you, sit back, have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and say it's working, because it is working, okay? Trust the process, because as you begin to heal, some of your old relationships are going to fall by the wayside, part of the growth process. So just trust the process. And then finally, I want you to stay tuned. Stay tuned, because every time that you overcome another trigger, you're going to become stronger and stronger. And as you deal with stuff in the trust the process phase, there are going to be situations that you're going to deal with that are going to make you think, I can deal with anything. I just came through there. There's nothing I can't deal with. Well, enjoy it while you can, because it's going to be something else you're going to have to deal with. And you're going to have to stay tuned and continue to flip the script on it and use this fruit strategy in order to get through it multiple times. So that's what I'm going to suggest that you do. Just try that. Now, here are some questions that I need you to ask yourself in the recalibrate phase. So this is what we're going to do to double check that subconscious stuff that's throwing us off. You're going to ask yourself 5 questions. Number 1, do I need an attitude adjustment? You want to determine if your attitude is perpetuating negativity into the situation. At that moment, you want to figure out, how can I leverage my will, my determination to make a better choice as opposed to engaging or perpetuating negativity. It ain't going to be easy if your issue is anger. But that's number one. Number two, how do I position myself to look at the event from another perspective? Is my perspective correct, or am I misperceiving the event? Number three, are my perspectives off? Am I reacting based on the facts of the situation, or have I subconsciously read something from my past into the current situation? Number four, what irrational beliefs are at play in the current situation? What lies am I telling myself or believing? What is the truth of this matter? Number five, what conscious or subconscious expectations are driving my reactions to the event? Those are questions that we must ask ourselves as trauma survivors, and especially people who had childhood trauma. Every situation is going to be snatching you back to the past. So what we're actually doing is reacting to the current situation exactly as if we were back in 1972, 1969, or 1950 when we were going through the trauma. It's an automatic thing because there's something in our brain called the amygdala that's overriding our prefrontal lobe, where rational thought and judgment exist. And you were traumatized way before the prefrontal lobe was completely developed. So now you really got issues if you had to go through that mess as a child. Regardless of what trauma, whether it was in childhood, adulthood, teenage, whatever, that trauma is causing our amygdala to override rational thought in the moment. So we're going to be jerked just like that. As if somebody actually was jerking us in the past and we're automatically responding. It's a humanity thing, y'all. It's just going to happen. But the good news is you can override that hijacking of the amygdala over time. Understand, this is a process. We didn't get whacked out overnight. And so we need to engage in this process. So when you get triggered with anger, and I'm talking to this Reddit user, the amygdala has hijacked your whole existence, right? And so you're going to have to back out of it by flipping the script on the way you usually respond. And then you're going to have to recalibrate yourself with these questions. I'm hoping that that's helpful, because it feels so freaking good, y'all, to just go with the trigger. I ain't mad at you. That's what we've been doing all our lives, but look at what it's brought us. I had this thing where, my mother would never let me defend myself. If she said I did it, I did it. And it was frustrating looking up in her face, not able to defend myself and not being believed. And so what I developed, grown a woman, professional settings, anything happened where I was falsely accused, instead of dealing with it as an adult, I would cry. I would cry. It was like I was getting snatched right back in the 70s and the 60s when I was growing up and not being able to defend myself against false accusations. It took me a lot of years to realize what was happening to me in those moments. And then I realized how I needed to deal with that, because that's totally unprofessional, y'all. But it's just the way it goes. And I'm not telling y'all all this so you can start beating yourself up and feeling bad about stuff. Give me a break. Nope, that ain't what this is all about. This is all about that if you want to address these triggers, these are the ways that you can do it, except that it's a process. And look, you got this. You got this. You got this. It's the only way that you can give the past a Shaq Science boot to the glutes is by utilizing some of these strategies I gave you. Anyway, there's a lot more details about these steps in the book. Whose apple is it anyway? Always remember your greatest power is realized in the truth of who you are. Know that truth. Wait, before you go. Click the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share the episode. Thanks.